Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're super excited to talk about Recast 5.0. I think internally we've been talking about this for probably a year now, so we're really excited to get out in the wild and let everybody see what is new and exciting. But before we do that, a few housekeeping items. So we're using a new platform. So if you look on the right side of your screen, there's some downloadable content. Those are all kind of fact sheets, customer stories that relate to the products that we're talking about today. Interactions, we've got two boxes you'll see at the bottom of your screen. One is for Q&A, so ask your questions there. Makes it just a lot easier for us to keep track of questions as they come through. And if you do have a question, don't feel like you have to hold it back to the end. We like to keep these very conversational, so just let them out as they come. Chat, anything non-question can be in the chat box. So if you could say where you're tuning in from, that would be great. It's a lot of fun to kind of see the breadth of how large the Recast community really is, especially globally. So say where you're tuning in from, that would be awesome. And then the next part is we've got our largest giveaway we've ever done before, which is for the MMS MOA show, which is the Midwest Management Summit at Mall of America, April 30th to May 4th. And it includes a ticket to the show, a hotel stay, and then a $500 airline credit of your choice. So I'll be pulling a name at the end of this webinar for the lucky winner. They'll be looking for an email from me later on. And then, let's see, so we've got two great presenters. If you've been on any of our other webinars, these faces should look familiar. We've got Marty and Courtney. Marty is our Senior Manager, Solution Engineering. And then Courtney is on his team as well as the Solutions Engineer. Both fabulous presenters. They know this stuff inside and out. I've got full confidence in them, so everyone here is in great hands. And a quick agenda before I pass it over to Marty and Courtney. So we're going to talk through, Recast 5.0. What does it mean? Why are we all excited about it? Why does Courtney and Marty have special shirts that say 5.0 release on them? We'll talk through what's new in right-click tools. Have a few poll questions, and then talk through some of our newer products. We've got Privilege Manager, which is our privileged access management solution, and then also our newest product, which is Application Manager, which is all about third-party patching. And then we'll ask some formal questions at the end as well. But in between those, we've got some poll questions we'll be asking also. So having said that, Marty, Courtney, you guys ready to kick this thing off?
Ready.
Perfect, Marty, it is all yours.
Actually, I'm going first.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Thanks. So some of the new features for 5.0, we have some bug fixes that got introduced with Configuration Manager 2207 and 2211. So those have now been fixed. So if anyone's still seeing behavior where you're getting error messages in the dashboard or it's crashing, update to 5.0 and see if that helps fix those issues. We do have technical documentation on our website as well to help you if you need it. We've made some great improvements that Marty will show a little bit later on the Recast Management Server. The interface looks a little different, and we're going to go through that. And then we've added a new feature called the Recast Agent Gateway. And what that does is it allows your agents to connect and helps with those pesky devices that don't go onto your internal network all the time. Just connect the internet so you can put that agent gateway on an internet-facing server, and then those agents can connect to the gateway and helps with those devices. And then last but not least, we have our integration with Privilege Manager. So Privilege Manager is now in the Recast Management Server, and Marty will take a closer deep dive into that for us. And then we have some historical facts. So if you like history like Marty does, this slide might be for you. We all know you like history, Marty. So Marty used the Wayback Archive to go find some of these dates. But we could see kind of the history throughout our big major releases. We do have some releases that have been going on from like 4.0 to 5.0. But their major release, started in this month. So, yeah, Marty, you can go ahead and take it
absolutely.
away.
So okay, it went to right-click tools demo. That's fine. So the reason that Courtney says, whether she knows it or not, why I like history is I was actually a history major in college, so graduated with a degree in history, which is why I am working in IT and worked as a desktop engineer for a couple of organizations. I know, it makes complete sense, right? Cool. So very good. What we are going to look at next is we are going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at some of the things that we've added, some of the things that are different. So hopefully here, I'll be sharing my screen in a second, and you should be able to see the Recast Management Server. So this is, in fact, the new version of the Recast Management Server. As you can see right here, 5.0. And you might say, hey, it looks pretty similar. And you're right, a lot of the same things are still here. The thing that's going to be different is when you actually click into the dashboards and take a look, how you select things is going to be a little bit different. A couple of versions ago in the 4.0, between 4.0 and 5.0, we added the thing called service connections, but we didn't really necessarily use them all that much because you could still set your different service connections in here. Service connections would be things like your config manager environment, any domains that you may have. So AD domains would be part of service connections, as well as BitLocker and MBAM if you still have that stood up, which go for it because Microsoft keeps kicking that. As long as BitLocker is going to still be supported, seems to keep getting longer and longer. But essentially, so you're going to set those up underneath the administration part, and then you can set up the service connections right here. Once you have, and we can show that. So this is the service connections that we have. If you had another domain, like we just have our demo domain here, you could add a service connection and then add another domain. Why I'm telling you that is when we come back here into like our Active Directory cleanup tool, we can select the service connections that we want to use, and it will know that we should, because it's Active Directory cleanup, it wants an Active Directory, OU, and a config manager collection. And you can choose which domain. If you have multiple, it'll show multiple ones here, similar with other things, but you can go ahead and select which one you want. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our Recast workstations. And then here, we're actually going to go, we have some demo collections that we have set up. And this is Active Directory Cleanup. And then we'll go ahead and go down, and where to actually make it happen. Here's where all the fun things go, is in the save and run scan. So we're going to go ahead and let that run. And now you can see a little bit of what how this looks as well. If you need to change what you need to change, you can do edit here. But then you can also, once again, as usual, you can select, and by clicking on the different pie pieces if you want to. You can also click here within the actual headers up above here and get to those groups as well if you want to. This can be really helpful if you have a really, really large environment and maybe just have a few devices that are only in one or the other. And it was really hard to click on those particular ones. Obviously, really easy just to click right in here and grab. You can always expand. You can export to CSV, as we always have. So just kind of a little deal. That's kind of the difference. And you'll see that in the other dashboards as well. Similarly, still from here, we can create snapshots. We can create trends. And those trends are still going to show up right here in our trends section. So you can kind of see what those look like as well. So trends, everything is just a little bit, dare I say, prettier, a little bit better looking. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. I'm not going to show each one of these necessarily, but it's the same kind of thing with each of the dashboards. You'll go ahead and select the service connections that you want to use, and then you'll go ahead and save and run the scan, and then it will go ahead and run the scan, and you can see what's missing from each of the devices. So that's just a little bit some of the interface things that are different. One of the next things that we mentioned to talk about was the agent gateway. And let's talk just for a minute a bit about what an agent gateway is. And I wish I had something to show. I don't necessarily, but what an agent gateway is, it is a new way that agents in your environment will communicate with the Recast Management Server. Agent gateways can be set up anywhere you want in your environment, anywhere that makes sense. And then you basically, when you install the Recast agent, you would tell it which agent gateway it should connect through. And that is how it's going to connect into the management server and show up on the agents page. The nice thing about the agent gateway, there are a couple of things that this helps with. And we're going to get a little technical here. That's okay. I promise. There are a couple of things this is going to help with. Because you can have multiple agent gateways in your environment, if you have a very large environment with a lot of agents, there's a theoretical limit, and then there's a limit, a real logical limit on how many agents actually connect before performance starts getting bad on the Recast Management Server. With the agent gateway, you can actually have multiple ones in your environment, so that limit should go away, and you should be able to have very, very many devices connected into your Recast Management Server through the agent. The other thing that the agent gateway does, and this one I'm really, really excited about, Courtney kind of mentioned it, but the agent gateway could also live somewhere internet facing in your environment, put it on the edge somewhere, and then even if your agents are not connected through VPN, even if they're not connected on the local network, as long as they can reach that agent gateway that you have on the edge of your network or you have internet facing, so as long as they're on the internet, they still should be able, you should be able to do right-click tools actions against them. So they are still available to do right-click tools actions. Now, you may be saying, hey, Marty, that sounds a lot like what you've been trying to tell me about the Cloud Management Gateway, and it is. But the feature that's going to be really nice with Agent Gateway rather than the Cloud Management Gateway is that Agent Gateway is native communication within the agent communicating with the Recast Management Server. So it should be faster than what is with the Cloud Management Gateway. That doesn't mean the Cloud Management Gateway communication goes away. If you have that set up, if you still want to use that, you absolutely can. That will still work. With this version, there's just another option for you to do that additional thing. Cool. I'm gonna keep pushing forward. I don't know if there are any questions we need to answer, we can, but I'm gonna.
Yeah. Marty, there are a few questions that have popped up. We'll just start with some of the short ones. Sure. What is the agent limit for one Recast server?
So that's a really good question. Prior to 5.0, the agent limit was like, don't quote me on this, 65,000 or something like that. Post 5.0, with multiple Recast agent gateways, theoretically, there shouldn't be a limit. If you'd like to find out what it is, if you have a really, really big environment and you want to find out what it is for us, that'd be all right too. But yeah, so theoretically, because we can, what's that?
The limit does not exist.
The limit does not exist because we can put,
sorry.
Yeah, because we can put multiple agent gateways in the environment, that should increase the number of agents that can connect, maybe not to infinity, but definitely within the realm of organizations. Good question.
We also got another one on if they have a really old version of the right-click tools, how should they update? Should they redo everything, or can they do an in-place upgrade? How's the upgrade process?
Yeah, so good question. The upgrade process has been tested many, many times by many, many people. So in theory, you absolutely can do an in-place upgrade if you run the Recast Management Server installer, the right-click tools installer, All of those should install over the top of each other. If you want to, if you're like, there's a couple of things that are going on maybe with our Recast Management Server database that haven't made me happy and I'd like to start over, you can do that too. So definitely you can upgrade over the top. That doesn't mean that you can't, start from scratch as well if you wanted to do that also.
Great. It looks like we've got a few more questions. Can the Recast Agent Gateway replace Cloud Management Gateway in terms of SCCM remote connections and deployments, or do they still need CMG for deployments and reporting?
Right. So essentially, that's a really good question. And what you're actually there is you would still need the Cloud Management Gateway to do the config manager things, like you said, like pushing applications. If you're doing other things with config manager through there, you would still want to have the CMG in place. This is going to replace right-click tools running actions over Cloud Management Gateway. So you could essentially make it so you don't have to use Cloud Management Gateway to do right-click tools actions, but you still want to have it in place for config manager actions or config manager things.
Thanks, Marty. I'm going to give you an easy one. So going back at the dashboards, there's a question: can a table be generated instead of a pie chart?
So that sounds like an amazing feature request. Right now, it's pie charts is what we have as part of the interface. We do have at ideas.recastsoftware.com is our feature request page. That'd make a great feature request. Maybe you want, whatever kind of other reporting you'd like to see from that would be a great feature request.
Great, and there's a bunch of other questions, but Marty, if you want to pass the screen back to me, we'll throw the poll up for a second and we can kind of continue to go through and answer some questions.
Yep, I'm going to do one more thing and then I'll go ahead and stop sharing. The other thing that you will notice, and I just want to point this out, is when you go into right-click tools, and maybe this is even the biggest one that you'll notice, is that we've kind of broken out some of the tools a little bit differently. So I apologize for your muscle memory if you're used to just going into things and right-click tools, blah, blah, blah. That's absolutely what mine is too. I'm used to the muscle memory of going in. But we've kind of broken them out as far as features go. So you can kind of think that what we're doing is we're actually kind of making it so that certain things can be a little bit more, so you can plug different plugins or different features, different products potentially can be added in here a little bit more easily. And in a minute, we're going to talk about one of the newest things that lives inside the Recast Management Server, which is Privilege Manager. So that's just a little tease for what we're going to talk about next. And I believe I have stopped sharing. Yes.
You have, yep. So we've got one poll question. So we'll let the audience look at the poll question. I've got a few other questions that have come through for Marty and Courtney. Let's see. Are there any additional network requirements for the Recast Agent Gateway?
So additional network requirements, the only communication is going to be over HTTPS from the endpoint to the agent gateway and from the agent gateway to the management server. So it's all HTTPS. So there may be some, if you have different ports, if you have all your ports closed or something like that, you may need to do something different there. But generally it's an HTTPS type. And with the setup, when you install your Recast Management Server, you set what port you want to use, and that's how it's going to be communicating back and forth, basically.
Great. Just for time's sake, we're going to keep this rolling. If you have asked questions, which there's a large list of questions, we'll do our best to answer those throughout additional polls and as well at the end for the question section. So Marty, if you want to kind of talk through the key features within Privilege Manager.
I'd love to. So Privilege Manager, let's talk just a little bit about Privilege Manager. So Privilege Manager is a relatively new product for us. And the idea of Privilege Manager is that you can have just in time or as needed elevation of local administrator rights for users in your environment, which is super helpful. And I'll show you in a second what that actually looks like as you're using it. Right now, with 5.0, you can configure and manage right from inside the Recast Management Server. And it is a next finish kind of thing to set up. And I'll show you how that works. And it also works with both Azure AD and on-prem Active Directory joined devices. So it'll work both directions. I'm going to grab the screen back again and start sharing again.
Actually, 1 second, Marty. We've got a poll question I want to throw up.
I will stop sharing. There you go.
All right, cool. Quick poll question. How are you currently managing admin rights with your end users? Generic local admin rights across all machines? Are you using LAPS? Do you currently have a different PAM solution, or are you currently looking for a PAM solution, or other? Which other is anything under the sun?
So for those of you who aren't as hip as Jeff might be, a PAM solution is a privilege access management solution. And LAPS, for that matter, is the local administrator password solution, just to throw that out there.
Thank you, Marty. I do try to stay hip with the kids, so it's
with the lingo. Absolutely.
Too many acronyms. It's too many.
Right,
All right,
exactly.
we're gonna go on to the results here. Looks like the majority is using LAPS. Then slightly PAM solution after that. Okay, we've got one more poll question as well. Are you currently able to provide self-service elevation to your end users? Yes, no. I give everyone admin access.
Free for all. Woo!
Free for all. It's the honor system, really.
You get admin rights, and you get admin rights. Everyone gets admin rights. Woo! Let's see. We can go through some questions. We have one. Do you have a cloud solution for the agent gateway, like CMG Gateway?
So we don't at the minute. Sounds like a perfect feature request, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does sound like a great
request.
feature request.
Yeah.
If we haven't already, we should give them the link. I'm sure it's on the webpage somewhere.
So it looks like, yeah, most of the results, people do not have a way to provide self-service elevation to their end users. So just kind of some fun questions to kind of, help probe some additional thoughts for yourself. But having said that, Marty, now I'm going to let you have the screen back and you can kind of talk through Privilege Manager.
Totally. I'm taking it.
Do it.
Maybe. There it goes. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about Privilege Manager. Hopefully you can see my screen again. So this is where we left off just a second ago. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over into my VM. I want to show what it looks like to an end user when they want to elevate themselves, essentially. So what that would look like, I'm going to go ahead and, just for the example, I'm going to run an installer here, possibly. Here it goes. So as you may, you've probably seen this before, where it asks, would you need to actually enter an admin and password, because I am not local admin on this device. And so what we've added is actually this little privilege manager thing down at the bottom here. That's what, now it actually works with the Recast agent itself. You do not need a separate agent anymore for privilege manager. You can use the regular Recast agent that you're using for right-click tools, that you're using for endpoint insights. It's all the same agent. But essentially there are a couple of different options that I can use. Use activation code would be that I call into someone who has the rights to create an activation code for me, so that I can actually go in and type in that activation code as they're telling it to me, or probably more likely I write it down, right? And when they're creating it, it can actually have a certain amount of time that it's valid for. So you can use that activation code until that validity time ends, and then it's not going to work anymore. The nice thing about using an activation code, it actually works even if the computer's not connected to the internet right now or can't reach a Recast agent gateway. It will work at any time. So that's what activation code is. There are two other things that you can do. You can actually use a local account. So it's a temporary local account that Privilege Manager puts on the computer. The password is changed so that it's, it's not just like the password isn't, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like on my luggage. It will actually have a password in there, but I don't need to worry about what it is. I don't need to know how it works. With this, because I have permissions to do it this way, I can just put in that I'm installing software. I can go ahead and hit it. I have permissions to install, so it's going to let me install as an administrator as I go and do this. Now, those of you who know Brave were probably thinking, hey, wait a second, Brave will install as a user too, and it does. But because I told it and I gave it the administrator information, it's actually installing it as if I were the admin on this device. So this is going to take just a second to finish. And then we'll go ahead and go into add remove programs, and I'll show you what it looks like to do it by using an actual domain account. So you can set those all to be done separately if you want. You don't think it's not really what you want to have the users just elevate themselves without having to put in permissions. You can make it so that self-service is what we called it is turned off. And they would need to use their domain account to log in. Or you could, honestly, you could set it up so that the only way you can do it is with that activation code if you wanted to. So now, because I installed it as an admin, it's going to ask me my admin permissions to uninstall. So I'm going to go ahead. This time I'm going to do it with my domain account. And this is going to take a second because so the most interesting thing about this is you can't just fake, like you can't copy and paste your password. So I'm going to try and do this without screwing it up. Okay, we'll see how good my typing is today. And so this is now connecting with the domain controller, making sure that I'm actually, that the password was correct. If I type that in wrong, it would actually give me an error, said that's not the right information. And then it'll go ahead and uninstall it. Now Brave asks us why would you leave? And wants us to come back. But so that's how that works from the side of the users who are actually using it. So let's go back and just take a look real quick at how we actually can set up Privilege Manager in your environment. So I mentioned that it was kind of a next finish type of configuration. So the first thing is you can specify if you want all agents to be able to elevate, and agents, remember that I said you need to have a Recast agent in order to elevate installed on the device. You can say all, or you can pick target devices. And when you pick target devices, essentially you can do it by domain, OU, device group, if you're talking about Azure Active Directory as well. You could also do it by specific, if you wanted to pick specific computers, you can do it by agents. Or you can essentially, device objects as well. So these are all the ways that you can specify targets if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and just do, for now, I'm not actually even going to set it up, but we'll do all agents. And then it's going to ask you if you want to use that temporary administrator possibility so that you can actually set it up so that users don't necessarily need to communicate with anyone, but can go ahead and set it up. And here's where you would set up that display name and the login name. And here you can actually also pick if you'd like to randomize local administrator account passwords. So this would actually, if you're thinking about laps, this is kind of that same that same feature is that we can actually randomize your local administrator accounts that already exist. So if you want to use a custom local account, you can use one that you already have, maybe that you're using as a administrator, but you're not using the built-in administrator. Or we can also randomize the built-in administrator account if you want to do that as well. And then finally, what you can actually do is, this was where you can set, I'd like to remove anyone who's currently admin on their device, and I only want these users to be allowed in. So you can actually add different users. If you already have another user that you want to keep in there, you can set it up so that those users would stay. But the nice thing is, this actually makes it so you don't have to go through your environment and try and figure out who's admin on which devices. But you should actually be able to see it right from here. You're essentially setting it so that it'll remove all those and only put in the people that it needs to put in. And that's kind of how that is set up. Once it's all set up, there is additionally what will happen down here, and I didn't open a VM that has it right now, but it'll show exactly what rules you have set up. And then it does also have logging as well. So if you need to see who's been elevating themselves, or why, or if you look at people can type in why they need to elevate. Maybe you discover that certain things, everybody's doing this certain thing. And so you can kind of get an idea of what's happening in your environment from the management server and from the perspective of privilege manager. And that's a little bit about privilege manager.
Great, thank you, Marty. So we've had a bunch of questions come through, so we'll spend a few minutes kind of answering those as well.
Sure.
The first one is, can LAPS and PAM work together?
So that's a really good question. You could potentially have it set up so that LAPS is still existing in your environment, and you set it up so that it's one of the accounts that you leave inside your local administrator group. So if you wanted to do that, you could, and then you could use Privilege Manager on top of that. So yes, you could live together. They could live together. You could also use it to replace LAPS if you wanted to do it that way, so that all your privilege access management, PAM, if you will, is all in one place.
Great. Let's do another question. Can you have the single use code instead of a valid time period? Oh, can you have the single use code only work for a valid time period?
Yes, absolutely. So when the person who's creating the code creates the code, it will ask them how long they would like it to be active for. I think it goes all the way from 1 hour to a year, maybe. And then the reason it goes that high is so that, because remember I mentioned that it can be used even if somebody is not connected to the network right now. So if somebody's taking a device someplace where they know they're not going to have internet connection, and you want them to still be able to elevate themselves as needed, you could use that code, and it would still be valid for a lengthier amount of time. But yes, you can set it for how long you'd like that code to be active.
There's also one other option, the next connected gateway. Sorry. Yep. There's the last option is the next time it connects to the agent gateway. So if it's offline, and then the next time it'll grab a new code if you need to.
Yep, for sure.
All right, so we've got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to throw up a poll question, and while that's up, we will continue to answer some questions. Switch to the audience. Would you like to learn more about Privilege Manager? So while that's being answered, let's see. Does it create a Windows profile? If it does, if so, does it remove the profile when you remove it? So
yes, I believe it is going to create a Windows profile for that user, simply because it needs to have some login info. That's not going to be a completely you've logged in with this account profile, like as you're, hi, please wait a minute while we load. It's not going to do all of that, but there will be that temporary account will have a profile. And right now that profile stays until you would delete it, is how that works.
Okay, thanks. We're going to keep on going into Application Manager. We have a lot of questions still for Privilege Manager, but don't worry, we are recording all of them. All right, Marty, so let's talk through Application Manager.
Awesome, let's do it. Oops, let me hit cancel here on my sharing my screen. So here you go. This is kind of a straightforward one, right? Application Manager is third-party patching and management. That works with Intune, works with Config Manager, and also works with WSUS. So third-party patching is a patching of applications that are made by someone other than Microsoft, right? And it is going to do third-party, it's going to be updating those. Let me show you a little bit of what it looks like from the management side, and then I'll show you also what it looks like in Config Manager itself. Okay, very good. So now I need to actually switch over to a different interface. So how Application Manager works is we have an interface here where I can actually, for Config Manager, I can turn on and off applications that I would like to install in my environment or to update in my environment. So what it looks like for Config Manager is essentially right here. You add things by turning them on or off. And as we scroll down, you can actually see there was a yes. We've got Adobe Reader DC is one of the things that we're upgrading in our demo environment. How it works on the Config Manager side, or how it connects into Config Manager, is what we call the Application Manager connector. So this is the Recast Application Manager connector. When you turn on the application on the other side, it's going to show up here, and essentially then you set it a deployment process that you would like it to use, and then it will deploy according to the deployment process. Now, that deployment process is actually going to be set up here inside the connector. So we have a default one that's set up, and then we can select which applications we'd like to have use that deployment process, or we can we've created some that are specific to applications. But here is essentially where you're going to set all those Config Manager things, like where would I like the package to be stored or the application to be stored. What it's actually going to do is it's going to copy down the application from am.recastsoftware.com. It's going to save it in your environment, and then it's going to create the application and deploy it based on settings that you have set. So here is how you can say how I'd like the application to be created. You can change what names you'd like. You can change which DPs you want it to be distributed to, if you have distribution points that you'd like it to go to. And then you can also then set up your deployment type settings. So you can actually set all those things that a lot of times I'll just click through as I'm going through Config Manager, creating an application. But then also, here is where you set how you would like it to deploy in your environment. And when it deploys in your environment, maybe I can make this, yeah. So you can actually set up multiple rings, if you will, on how you'd like it to deploy. So what we actually do is we first send it out to a test group, and this would actually simulate the dates of when things would go out. So we send it out to our deployment group, our test group immediately, and it becomes required 2 days later or 3 days later. And then after that's done, then we send it out to our Recast Workstations group. And then 3 days after that, it becomes required on our Workstations group. So you can kind of make it how you want it to be set. So, make deployment available. This one becomes available 2 days after on any working day at any time. And then it forces installation. I guess I'm reading this wrong. It looks like it forces installation 1 day later. This one does it immediately, and then 1 day later it's required. So it's just kind of how that is set up. And then that will create the application in Config Manager. So actually, let me go over, oh, I guess I don't have, wait, one of these I have config manager open. Yes, here it is. So over here, we should actually, under our software library, under application management, we have it set to go into a group called application manager. And here are all the applications that it's created. The nice thing is when a new version comes out, it's going to run those deployments. Once the next version comes out, if it's already been required, in a previous one, it's going to go ahead and retire the older ones and make them so that they're no longer active. This one, it looks like it missed, should have been listed as not active, but is still there. But let's go ahead and take a look at Google real quick. And then we'll show you what this looks like for Intune as well. So as you can see, we've got two essentially that are active, the two newest ones, and everything else has been retired. I can delete these at this point. We just haven't been. Because it does it automatically. I'm going to talk just a second about Intune, but the nice thing, and I actually wrote a blog about this, is that it could do this automatically. You don't need to have any interaction with it at all for something like it will for any software if you didn't want to have interaction with it. For example, Google Chrome, one of the updates came out the day after Thanksgiving in the United States. And I don't know how many of you were working the day after Thanksgiving. I certainly wasn't. But we were able to start our testing deployments immediately because it did it automatically. And I didn't have to be there to get things started. So now the other thing that I wanted to show is what this looks like for Intune. So in Intune, all of your setup is going to be right here. There's essentially a connector that's installed in Intune. And then right from here, you can select, we'll see what we get here. This should select the application manager application groups. So we'll see. I must not have given my appropriate sacrifice to the demo gods. But it is moving, so we'll hope that we get to the end here. Well, so essentially, while this is thinking, oh, there we go. Let me get out of the way here. So we can actually create an application group here that you would like to have the application installed through. We can also then, on this side, set up deployment processes and schedule when you would like those deployments to actually be deployed. And then right here again is service applications, where you would actually turn on or off the application that you would like to deploy. So deployment processes. So we have a couple of different ways that we have these set up, but you can select the applications as well as set up our deployments, and you can edit how that deployment works right here. So you can have your scheduling, where this is going, all that kind of thing. You can put in your group that you're sending it to, and all that kind of stuff as well. We don't have a ton of time to look at all of this, but the other thing is it does also work with WSUS. So if you're still using WSUS to update servers maybe, or you're using it for whatever you want to use it for, it has a connector similar to what Config Manager has, and essentially you would turn on and off the applications here as well. All right, that is Application Manager in a 7-minute nutshell or something like that.
Great, thank you very much, Marty. We got a few poll questions we're going to throw up, and then we will close this out. Let's push this to the audience. So how are you currently managing your application updates? I'm not, we're hoping for the best. We currently use a third-party software to help us, or we are doing the manual, tedious tasks of testing and deploying them ourselves. And we've got, like I mentioned throughout this webinar, we have a ton of questions that are coming through. We just don't have time to answer all of them, but we are collecting them. So we will figure out a way to make sure we answer all of the questions. All right, let's see what the poll results look like. Looks like, well, I'm glad that I'm not is the smallest of the three choices. That's always good to see. But third-party patching solutions already up there, and then a lot of manual work doing it yourself. And then we'll do one more poll question, which is, would you like to learn more about Application Manager after Marty's fabulous demo? And yeah, we have so many questions coming through. Let's see. So there's been a lot of questions around, what does our application library look like? How quickly are we adding applications to it? Our goal is to be adding 2 to 3 applications a day starting in a few days, actually, I think in March. Hopefully by midsummer, our library will be up to around 400 or so. And if you look at kind of the main categories of the most widely used piece of software across organizations, we aim to cover most of those software, or most of this there. All right. So now let's do the MMS giveaway since we are 1 minute over. So that would be Rick Bywalski from Phoenix, Arizona. Congratulations. You are the MMS giveaway winner. So you'll be looking for an email from me, reaching out to you today or tomorrow, Jeff@Recast. And Rick, if you have jumped off, I will give you about a week. And if you don't reply, we'll go to the next person on the list. So congratulations, Rick. But we hope to see everyone at MMS. We'll be there showing off our presentations. Or our products. We'll also be presenting. So it's really a great show. Last part is we have an upcoming webinar, March 30th. So at the end of last year, we sent out a survey to roughly 500 system admins, and some of the people actually on this call, you may have been part of that survey group, asking them a broad range of questions. So March 30th, we're going to be kind of going through what that survey looked like, the data, any trends we found, and things like that. So it's really informative, I can tell you that much. So March 30th, obviously, look for more emails coming from Recast to kind of help promote that and give you some more insight on that as well. Per usual, if you want to know more about Recast and any of our products, head over to recastsoftware.com. We're always happy that you're there, happy to give you another demo or anything like that. And having said that, Courtney, Marty, thank you very much for answering questions, providing insight in the demos. And also thank you to everyone that jumped on today. We hope that you guys found this as exciting as we did, and hope to hear from you everyone soon. So Courtney, Marty, any final words before we end this?
Thank you for coming.
Nope. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming.
Yep, thank you. Look for a follow-up email from Recast in the next couple of days. So thank you, everybody.